What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rumble Rewind. I am Brandon. Today we are talking about Monday Night Raw live from Hershey, Pennsylvania. Let's get right to it. This is about last night. Hey, before we dive into this week's episode of Monday Night Raw, do me a favor, scroll down below this video and hit that like button for me because I promise you're going to love it. Now, while you're down there, go ahead and hit the subscribe button as well because we are a new channel. We're pushing to get our first 200 subscribers, and when we do, we've got a sick WWE giveaway coming your way. So you're going to want to also turn on those post notifications so that you will be one of the first to find out when we give additional details. All right, let's get into today's episode of About Last Night. We've got a lot to talk about on this episode. Liv Morgan and the Judgment Day were all over it, so we'll talk about them a little bit later. Let's get to the first match of the night. It was Sheamus versus Ludwig Kaiser. Sheamus was interviewed backstage and said he has to give Kaiser credit for the way he came at him last week. He said he thought that maybe Gunther was actually holding Kaiser back. He said Kaiser had an opportunity to earn his respect, and the way that he did that was to put on banger after banger after banger. Sheamus would make his entrance, but Kaiser would attack the knee of Sheamus during his entrance. The match would follow as a very physical match from both men, but eventually Sheamus would go for the avalanche white noise from the middle rope, but Kaiser would slip out, attack the knee once again, and get the leverage pin for the win over Sheamus. I gotta say, this is a huge win for Ludwig Kaiser. Gunther wasn't there. It wasn't a dirty win. Now, of course, Kaiser did attack him before the match started. You could argue that that was a dirty start, dirty tactics, but that's just something that happens all the time. For Kaiser to get this win without outside interference, without any distractions from Gunther or Imperium or anything like that is huge for Kaiser. It's actually kind of shows me that there's hope for his character. There's hope for him to be more than a sidekick, and I think this is a big win. WWE has to continue to figure out how to build up some of these people that are kind of on the fringes, and I think this shows that there's a commitment to doing that, and this is a great start toward that for somebody like Kaiser. Now from there, we would get a backstage segment with Ricochet getting his ribs checked out. Dragunov would enter the scene. They would talk for a bit about their rivalry and that Ricochet was going to face Braun tonight. Ricochet said that him and Ilya could finish their rivalry once he was done with Braun. From there, we would get an in-ring promo from Sami Zayn, and we'll get back to that in a moment. But after that promo, we would see Braun Breaker backstage with Adam Pearce. Breaker would say that he could break Sami Zayn in half, but he does congratulate Pearce on finally giving Braun some actual competition. Pearce said that Braun was only in the match tonight because Ricochet wanted it, and Ricochet understands respect. Braun promised to teach them both some respect after their match tonight. Now, we would get that match a little later, and it would be kind of back and forth with both men getting in some good offense. Of course, throughout, Braun looks powerful. Ricochet's doing his high-flying stuff. But eventually, Ricochet would go up top for his finisher, and Braun would cut him off, hitting an insane Frankensteiner that you got to find it. Go to www.com, check out the highlights. It was incredible. Followed that up with a spear to get the win. Now, post-match, Braun was not done. He began to beat down Ricochet and eventually threw him into the ring steps. He picks up the top half of the stairs, but he gets held back by producers, backstage, security. Eventually, Dragunov runs to ringside. Braun throws the stairs at his head. Thankfully, Dragunov ducked underneath, knocks Braun over the barricade. Braun is then escorted out by producers and security while Ilya checks on Ricochet. Man, this feud right here is heating up. It's kind of this triple threat feud going on, but it looks like it's more Ricochet and Ilya up against Braun, and Braun is just ripping through whoever they put in front of him. I think that we're going to get Ilya versus Braun soon, and this is going to be a massive feud. These matches are going to be incredible. They put on some bangers in NXT. If you've never watched any of their stuff together before, they have put on some incredible matches, and I can't wait to see them put on some of those incredible matches at this level. I'm here for it. I do hope that they spend some more time building up Ilya before they pull the trigger on it. This is going to go back and forth. Both guys are going to get some wins. Both guys are going to take some losses from one another. But it's important that they both come out of this thing looking strong. They're both incredible competitors, and they both got a lot of potential for the future. Now back to that Sami Zayn promo. He's talking about Alpha Academy. He's talking about Chad Gable and all of the issues and challenges he has had with him over the last few weeks. Alpha Academy would eventually make their way to ringside without Chad. and Maxine would be tasked with delivering a message. And the message was that until Chad Gable got his one-on-one shot against Sami Zayn, that Sami was not worth his presence. So Sami says that he'll give Gable a title shot at Clash at the Castle. At this point, Sami kind of turns his attention and says he wants to talk to the members of Alpha Academy. He says, you don't have to do this. You need to get out. You need to free yourselves, and that he understands. Of course, he's referencing his time in the Bloodline and how he was abused by Roman Reigns. He's saying that Chad Gable is doing the same thing. Before Sami can finish this thought, though, Gable attacks him from behind. Eventually, Gable looks to Otis to get some help with Sami, but Otis refuses to hit him. Gable, of course, steps in, slaps Otis. Tozawa finally grabs Gable to try to stop him, and Gable turns around. Tozawa shuts down. Gable shoves him a few times. Maxine asks him to stop, and Gable says, get on your knees and beg. Maxine does it. Gable says they're all pathetic and says for them to get out of the ring. As they're getting out of the ring, Otis gets in Gable's face. The crowd is going absolutely wild, expecting Otis to flip out, to snap finally. But before anything can happen, Sami Zayn gets back to his feet and attacks Gable. This causes Otis to run into Maxine and knock her off the apron where she grabs her ankle as if she's injured. Otis snaps at this point, gets in Gable's face. Gable convinces him that it was Sami's fault, and Otis attacks Sami again. Otis then leaves the ring, picking up Maxine and putting Akira Tozawa over his shoulders, carries them both to the back. Gable there stands tall over a fallen Sami Zayn, holds up the Intercontinental title, and celebrates as we head out to the next segment. Now, backstage a little later, we would see the follow-up to this with Gable approaching the members of Alpha Academy to celebrate. He's excited. He says that Maxine played her role perfectly, that she did a great job of faking the injury. Maxine says she thinks that she is actually hurt, and Gable continues to celebrate her, saying that she's doing a great job staying in character and celebrates her method acting. Gable would continue to celebrate with Alpha Academy and say at Clash at the Castle, they would finally accomplish their goal of winning his Intercontinental title. I cannot wait to see where this goes. I'm still expecting at some point we get the Alpha Academy to just turn on him. I hope it's next Monday. It would be great leading into Clash at the Castle. It would make Gable seem alone, where they could debut the Creed brothers with him. I wanted that to happen at King and Queen of the Ring, but as I look back, maybe this is the way that it was going to go, and that's great. If you didn't see my King and Queen of the Ring review, you can check out this video right here as I talked about why I thought that the Creed brothers should debut in the way that I thought they should. But we'll see what happens next. Either way, this story is cooking, and I'm really enjoying it. Next up, we would get the in-ring debut of Kiana James. Finally, I'm excited for Kiana James. I really liked her in NXT. I hope that they do something great with her, but she was going to be taking on Natalya. So before the match, she got an interview where she praised Natalya, said she was excited about this match, and was hopeful that she could get this win because for her it'd be a big deal. From there, Kiana would make her entrance, and unfortunately she get a pretty small reaction. Now I gotta say, Kiana wasn't always featured in a top spot on NXT like your Lyra Valkyria, so we gotta give her some time, we gotta give her some grace, some opportunity to develop that connection with the crowd. But for a first match after some backstage segments, this was kind of not the pop I'm sure people were hoping for. Now, in the match, both women would get a good bit of offense, and eventually Natalya would go for the sharpshooter. Kiana would kick out of it and hit Natalya with the 401k to pick up the win. Now, I gotta be honest with you, as much as I enjoyed Kiana's in-ring work in NXT, this wasn't it. This match didn't hit for me. It looked a little clunky. Some of the spots were off. You could see that they weren't really comfortable together in the ring. And even that the finisher looked weak, and it normally isn't like that. Kiana's normally a bit more energetic, a little more high-powered in her offense, and so it was kind of a bummer to see it go down that way. Now, as I look at the match itself, though, the truth is that Natalya hasn't won a match on Raw that I can remember. And so maybe that's part of it. The crowd just kind of knew what was going to be the outcome. There was little suspense. And so I could see that as being an issue as well. Hopefully, though, Kiana James will stay on track. Hopefully she gets a feud going soon and some storylines that can help the crowd get to know her a little bit. I'm still hopeful for Kiana. This is by no means me saying she's not going to make it. I really, really hope she does. Now, a bit later, backstage, we would see Natalya walking. She's frustrated. She's approached by Sonya Deville, and Sonya asked Natalya if she still wanted to talk. Natalya said, yes, enough is enough, and it's time for a change. That line is iconic. It is a classic Owen Hart line from when he was on his run, and she's paying tribute to that, and I love it. I want to see Natalya kind of snap and turn heel, and I think that this team up with Sonya Deville could be great, especially if they bring in Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark. I could see this being a fun faction, maybe sort of like a queen type of thing where, Shayna Baszler is known as the Queen of Spades. Natalya could be the Queen of Hearts. Who knows what's going on, but I do agree with Natalya. Enough is enough and it's time for a change. She does need a change. She does need a character overhaul. She needs something to happen other than being the veteran backstage that takes a bunch of losses. But continuing with this backstage segment, right after that conversation with Natalya, Sonya would turn to talk to Shayna and Zoe, who would once again blow her off. So we've got some roadblocks to this whole faction plan that I just laid out. But we'll see where it goes. Now, a bit later in the ring, we would get a face-to-face conversation with Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler facing off against Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair. Now, this was set up last week when Shayna and Zoe said that they were going to invite the tag team champions to see what it's like over on Raw. Now, this conversation would carry on and continue, but it would eventually become Zoe and Shayna getting their title shot against Jade and Bianca. This match would kind of go mostly in favor of the champions. Late in the match, Bianca would hit Shayna with the KOD, but before she could get the cover and the pin, Alba Fire and Isla Dawn would attack, ending the match in an apparent no contest. Cargill tried to jump in and make the save on behalf of her partner, but Zoe and Shayna joined in and all four women attacked the champions. Later in the night, Jackie would catch up with Alba Fire and Isla Dawn and ask them what was going on, and they said that they are tired of being overlooked, they're tired of being passed up, and from now on, instead of waiting around, they were going to take what they want. They spoke about Clash at the Castle and how it was a travesty that neither of them was on the card, so we'll see what happens. I'm certain that Bianca and Jade on Friday night will say, you want a shot, you got a shot, we'll see you at Clash. I don't see Jade and Bianca losing those tag team championships until they're ready to start a feud between the two of them. Till one of them costs the other the championships. They're going to hold on to it. But what I do see happening and what is going forward, looks like we're getting some teams established out of this. And this is a good thing. This women's tag team division needs to be beefed up a little bit. We do have a few established teams. We've got Zoe and Shayna who have been teaming for a while. We've got Alba Fire and Isla Dawn who have been former tag team champions together. There's other teams on the shows like Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae who are kind of officially in tag team mode now. We've got Kaden Carter and Katana Chance. We've got to just continue to keep building some teams. Right now, if you look at Jade and Bianca, who's taking the titles off of them? Nobody. It's not going to happen. Again, it's not going to happen until they make it happen. And so what we can do with this right now is continue to build up the division. A little later, we'd get a backstage interview with the New Day, and they would be asked about Karrion Kross. At the question, Kofi kind of pushed his way in and said that no one could break up this team. No one could break up this friendship. And the reason that no one could do that is because New Day rocks. Yep, that's why. New Day rocks. They would do the New Day rocks thing. Karrion Kross would enter the scene and just kind of smiling, be like, I love that. That's so good. He said, but the power of positivity is dead. Once again, Kingston sort of steps in and tells Kross that they would find out tonight that it still hits the same. As they were exiting, Kross kind of grabs Woods and says that you don't need to follow behind him anymore. And he would see that tonight. A little later, that match would take place, and it's going back and forth. AOP is in control with Woods in the ring. Woods is getting ready to go make a tag, but Karrion Kross distracts Kofi Kingston at ringside, who hops down and gets in Kross's face. Right about this time, Xavier Woods turns to make the tag and sees that Kofi's not there. He turns around, gets attacked again by AOP, who hit him with the Water Rush and get the win. Now, as previously discussed, I'm not a fan of New Day. I'm not a fan of what they're doing right now. It's kind of boring, it's overplayed, and I'm over it. I loved this, though. I loved this story. I loved this match. I loved how it pushed forward the doubts that Kross is trying to sow. It made Kofi look selfish. It made Kofi look like he doesn't care about Xavier Woods. Honestly, it's great storytelling. I really hope this leads to something fresh for everyone involved, because we know the Final Testament and Karrion Kross has been kind of spinning their wheels for a while. New Day's been spinning their wheels for a while. This story has potential. The Final Testament as a group has potential, and I think it could be great if their whole goal is to just go around and try to break up teams, and they're what creative uses to refresh things that need refreshing. I love it. Cautiously optimistic, though, because we've had false starts with Karrion Kross before, and so I'm just hopeful that this goes somewhere. Tell me what you think, though. Are you hopeful about this? Do you think that this Final Testament thing could go somewhere? Let's find out. Right after that, Jey Uso would cut a promo from the crowd, and he would talk about the upcoming Money in the Bank PLE. Now, of course, we got to get past Clash at the Castle. but Money in the Bank is pretty shortly right after, so they're going to have to do some overlap storytelling here for a week or so. But Jey Uso talked about last year's Money in the Bank being the Bloodline Civil War match. Well, the first one. Him and Jimmy versus Roman and Solo. And so he talked about that day being the day that he lost his family, that everything went south for him, but he said he stayed in the fight. He's talked about the journey from becoming sidekick to main event Jey Uso, and he thanked the fans for helping him get there. He said it was time for him to deliver on that and make good on what the fans have done for him, and he was going to do that by winning Money in the Bank. All right, this is great. I think Jey Uso and Money in the Bank will be awesome. I think that he'll help put on a great match. Jey Uso is incredible in spots like that and matches like that. That said, I don't think that Jey Uso has a shot at winning Money in the Bank. Now, he could be a dark horse depending on who else is in it, and I might have to take that back a little ways down the road. I just don't see him being the type of guy that they're going to put that Money in the Bank briefcase with. The reason why is because Money in the Bank cash-ins usually lead to heel turns. Tell me in the comments if there's been somebody who's cashed in Money in the Bank that hasn't ended up turning heel. Even CM Punk, when he was a face, when he cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase, the crowd turned on him. And they rode that wave into creating the CM Punk pipe bomb character that was so iconic. It normally ends in a heel turn because the premise of the Money in the Bank briefcase serves well in the heel persona. It's all about taking advantage of people. This is not Jey Uso's character, so I just don't see him winning. Let me know what you think. Do you think Jey has a shot at winning Money in the Bank? We'll have to see. Speaking of Money in the Bank, right after that, we get a backstage interview with Lyra Valkyria. She was asked about Becky Lynch, and Lyra said, of course, she's sad that she's taking some time away. She hopes that she'll come back eventually. She was then asked what she's going to do without her, and Lyra said she's proven that she can stand on her own, and she will continue to do so. Lyra talked about Money in the Bank and said that she plans on being in that match so that she can take some steps forward. Before she could finish her thought, though, out of nowhere, Io Sky attacks and just kind of beats Lyra down in the back, throws her into some backstage gear, and then storms off, continuing to throw things. And Io is on a warpath right now, and I love it. I want to see Io Sky as a dominant heel. I think Io is incredible in the ring. She's one of the best technical wrestlers that we've got. She's one of the best high flyers that we've got. Io Sky has been tragically underutilized. I love that Io's on a warpath. Now back to Lyra getting into that Money in the Bank match. Maybe, but I have the same thoughts on Lyra that I have on Jey. And also, I still think Tiffany Stratton is a lock to win Money in the Bank. The only dark horse I see that could take it from her is Chelsea Green. Those are the two characters that we've got right now in WWE that make the most sense to hold that briefcase, that make the most sense to be the type that cash in that briefcase, that would carry it well. I don't see Lyra as a face being able to make that briefcase feel like a threat. You know, I think she'd be the kind of person that tells the champion that she's going to cash it in like a week later or something like that. And that's boring. That's not what Money in the Bank is for. Money in the Bank is for shocking moments like we had at WrestleMania with Damian Priest. That's what Money in the Bank is for. And Jey Uso, Lyra Valkyria, they're just not that right now. All right, well, like I said at the top of the show, Liv Morgan and the Judgment Day were all over this. Liv would actually open the show and welcome everybody to the Liv Morgan Revenge Tour. Liv said that she was told by numerous people that revenge is never that sweet once you actually get it. Liv says that now that she's gotten a fair amount of her revenge tour completed, she disagrees. At this, Dominic would come to the ring. He said that Rhea's playing a different game and that when Mommy comes back, she's going to kill you. Liv responds by saying maybe, but I'm pretty sure she's also going to kill you. We're going to follow that up by telling Dom not to worry though, because Liv would make it all worth it. Interesting. At this point, Finn Balor would come out and tell Liv to leave, and she says that she'll go for now. On the way out, she rubs Dom's hair, which causes him to smile a little bit, creating some interesting moments. Later on, backstage, we would see Finn Balor in Dominic's face, and Dom would say he didn't do anything. Finn said, yeah, you're right, and that's the problem. Priest would enter and ask for an explanation, but Finn says that it's handled, no explanation needed. Priest asks Dominic at this point if Rhea thinks it's handled. Dominic says that he's giving Rhea some space, but it's fine. Priest says that they need to remind everyone tonight that the Judgment Day runs Raw. Later, we would get a match between Finn Balor and Dragon Lee. Dragon Lee had a lot of his signature offense in this, but eventually the distractions and interference by JD McDonough and Carlito would allow Balor to gain control and eventually get the win. Now, after the match, though, Braun Strowman would come out and beat down all three members of the Judgment Day. Backstage, Priest asked the rest of the Judgment Day why the Strowman problem hasn't been handled yet. He looks at Carlito and says if he wants a shot at getting into the Judgment Day, then he would handle it by getting a match with Braun Strowman tonight. R-Truth then enters the scene talking to Carlito and says that he understands how Carlito feels. He says the Judgment Day, when you're down, they kick you, and when you're up, they still kick you. He says, but being in the Judgment Day were some of the best days of his life. To which Miz responds, we are the World Tag Team Champions. These should be the best days of your life. In response, R-Truth turns to the Miz and says that Miz's obsession with the Judgment Day is unhealthy and it's getting weird. I've been kind of over the R-Truth comedy bits, the insanity of it all. It's been wearing on me. This was funny. Moving on, a little later backstage, we would get a segment with Rey Mysterio, Dragon Lee, and Zelina Vega. Rey told Dragon Lee not to worry about the loss, that he'd be back on top before we knew it. Rey would go on to say that they would prove that later tonight when Rey would take on Damian Priest in the main event. Let's talk about Rey Mysterio for a minute. Let's talk about the LWO for a minute. I'm bored of this. I'm bored of Rey Mysterio. I'm bored of his character. I'm bored of all of it, of anything that has to do with him. It doesn't seem to matter who he's up against or what the circumstances are. It's all the same. He's taken somebody like Zelina Vega and made her disappear. He's borderline doing the same thing to Dragon Lee, a guy who in NXT had a lot of potential and a lot of hope. And even when he came to SmackDown, was getting some wins and stuff like that. And now it's effectively become Rey Mysterio's sidekick. I'm over it. I'm bored of Rey Mysterio in the LWO. Let's move on. He's approaching New Day territory for me right now, and I'm ready to be done with it. All right, continuing to follow this whole LWO, Judgment Day, Liv Morgan triangle that we've got going on in this episode of Raw, we would get a match later with Braun Strowman and Carlito. Strowman got the quick squash win in just over a minute, but after the match, the Judgment Day would attack. Braun would fight them off because that's what Braun does. Eventually, he went after Dominic, but Liv would run down to ringside, get in front of him, and this would allow the other members of Judgment Day to get the upper hand and actually beat down Braun Strowman. Afterward, Liv approached Dom, but Finn Balor jumped in between them again and Liv backed off. In a later backstage interview, Priest said it was time to put the issue of the LWO to bed and that after tonight, Judgment Day would be done with Dominic's father. Now, Drew McIntyre would interrupt to further push their match at Clash at the Castle. All right, for keeping score at home, everyone's involved in this now. We've got the LWO, we've got Judgment Day, we've got Liv Morgan, we've got Drew McIntyre, it's a lot. Later, we would finally get that match in the main event with Rey Mysterio taking on Damian Priest. Now, Priest was in control for most of the match, but eventually, Rey would get in a pop of offense and even hit the 619 and drop a dime for a near fall. Judgment Day would, of course, get involved. They would fight with Dragon Lee on the outside, and instead of focusing on the match, Rey would attack the members of Judgment Day. Priest would gain control, hit him with the South of Heaven, and get the win. After the match, Drew McIntyre would attack Priest again, hitting him with the Future Shock DDT, and then celebrating with the title. During this moment, the other members of Judgment Day come in to help Priest, but McIntyre is able to fight them off. Drew clears the announce table and then gets into an argument with Michael Cole. While he's in this argument with Michael Cole, Priest attacks Drew McIntyre from behind, choke slams him through the announce table. Good match. No argument there. The match was good, but I feel like they went way too far in protecting Rey Mysterio. They actually made Priest look weak, and they need to be protecting Priest, and they need to be building up Priest and giving him dominant wins. The fact that he barely got this win over Mysterio, and then on top of that, Drew gets the best of him in the ring, they've got to make Priest look stronger. They've got to make him look like a legitimate champion. We're going to Clash at the Castle. It's in Scotland. He's taking on Drew McIntyre. Everything says Drew's walking out with that belt. It may not happen. That's not an official prediction. But they need to build up Priest to make him look stronger and stronger. Here's the thing that kind of caught my attention in all of it, though, is the moment when Liv protected Dominic from Braun Strowman earlier in the night. Priest told the Judgment Day for weeks to handle the Braun Strowman problem, and the only reason they were successful in even gaining some ground in that tonight was Liv Morgan, because Liv stepped in. And so for me, I'm looking at this saying, Liv is doing it. She's taking over the Judgment Day. She's going to take everything from Rhea. I can't wait to see how this story pays off. All right, let's talk overall this episode of Monday Night Raw. To me, it was just decent. There were some fresh matchups on there. There were some things that started to move forward. There were some seeds planted, things like that. But there was nothing really over the top or exciting. Even the Nightbird QR code that happened earlier in the night was kind of a recap QR code, was kind of not anything groundbreaking or anything like that. So I would say overall, this episode was maybe like a 6.5 out of 10. But tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me what you would rate this episode. While this episode wasn't great, I will say that I do believe that it's leading to some great things. It's beginning to tell some stories that could potentially be great, and it's all going to be in the follow-up. Clash of the Castle is less than 2 weeks away. As we get into the go-home week, I'm expecting some big things for Raw next week as we head towards Clash of the Castle, as we get closer and closer to whatever's happening on June 17th surrounding Uncle Howdy, Nightbird, all of that stuff. There are some big things happening in the WWE over the next couple of weeks. So I hope that, as good old JR would say, that business is about to pick up. Well, hey, that is it for today. Thanks for hanging out with me on Rumble Rewind as we discuss all things Monday Night Raw. Before you go, do me a quick favor, scroll down below this video, hit that like button, and if you're not already, subscribe to the channel. Like I said before, once we hit 200 subscribers, we're going to be giving away some awesome WWE merch, and so you are not going to want to miss that. The best way to keep up to date with all the information is to make sure that your post notifications are turned on so that you never miss an upload. Once again, thanks for hanging out with me on Rumble Rewind. Catch you on the next one.